What if I told you that Suzuki went all in on an engine nobody understood? In the 70s, while the rest of the world stuck to the usual, the R5 showed up. A bike with a rotary engine, futuristic design, and an ambition that seemed out of this world. It wasn't common, it wasn't cheap, and it definitely wasn't for everyone. But its story is one of the wildest and bravest in motorcycle history. Today I'm going to tell you how Suzuki tried to change the game and created one of the rarest and most legendary motorcycles of all time. To understand the Suzuki R5, you have to go back to the early 70s, a time when the motorcycle world was completely out of control, but in the best way possible. Japanese brands were growing at a crazy pace, and the competition was getting more and more intense. Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki weren't just fighting to sell more bikes. They were battling to prove who had the best engineering on the planet. Every year, more powerful engines, faster bikes, and new technologies would show up that seemed straight out of the future. But in the middle of all that war, a much more dangerous obsession started to appear: innovating at any cost. It was no longer enough to just make a good bike. Now you had to create something revolutionary, something that would completely change the industry. And that's where a technology comes in that at the time seemed almost like science fiction: the Wankel engine. The concept was completely different from a traditional engine. Instead of using pistons moving up and down, the Wankel used a rotating rotor. There were no conventional valves, no traditional reciprocating movement. Everything was more compact, smoother, and in theory, much more efficient. It was the kind of technology that got engineers excited, because on paper it seemed perfect. Smaller, lighter, smoother, and on top of that, futuristic. It seemed like the next logical step in the evolution of engines. While many brands were watching this technology with curiosity, one company was already betting big on it: Mazda. Their rotary cars were starting to attract attention for their smoothness, their ability to rev high, and their unconventional design. The Wankel engine was becoming a simple innovation. And Suzuki saw all of this and became obsessed, because if the Wankel could revolutionize cars, why couldn't it revolutionize motorcycles too? When Suzuki decided to bet on the Wankel engine, they didn't do it as a small experiment or as a technological curiosity just to get attention. Suzuki truly believed that the future of motorcycling could be rotary. And that's why, instead of making a limited prototype, they fully committed. The company officially licensed Wankel technology, invested millions of dollars, and dedicated entire years to developing a motorcycle that would break all the known rules. The Suzuki R5 wasn't just some odd attempt, it was an all-in bet. A motorcycle designed to prove that Suzuki could lead the next technological revolution. And technically, the R5 was impressive for its time. Its single-chamber rotary engine offered an equivalent displacement close to 500 cubic centimeters, but it operated in a completely different way from any other motorcycle on the market. There were no pistons moving up and down, no traditional valves. Everything revolved around an internal rotor that made the engine feel incredibly smooth. And that's where the bike started to feel strange. Because the R5 didn't vibrate like a normal motorcycle, it didn't sound like a normal motorcycle, it didn't even accelerate like a normal motorcycle. Everything was different. The power delivery was ultra-linear, extremely smooth, almost as if the bike was floating instead of mechanically exploding like traditional Japanese bikes. And the sound was really strange, more like a turbine or a futuristic industrial machine than a conventional engine. But to achieve that, Suzuki had to create an extremely complex system. The engine generated an incredible amount of heat, so they added liquid cooling combined with specialized oil lubrication. The result was a bike full of advanced technical solutions, but also complicated, heavy, and difficult to fully comprehend, even for many mechanics of the time. And this is where the story of the Suzuki RE5 starts to fall apart, because even though it was technically a fascinating bike, in practice, significant reliability issues began to surface that the market simply wasn't willing to tolerate. On paper, the Wankel engine seemed completely revolutionary, compact, smooth, and futuristic, but in real-world use, it had several major flaws that became impossible to ignore. The first was fuel consumption. The R5 used up a ton of fuel. And right in the middle of the oil crisis of the 70s, that was just about the worst possible time to launch a gas-guzzling bike. While the world was starting to worry about efficiency and economy, Suzuki showed up with a futuristic bike that burned fuel like there was no tomorrow. And then there was the heat. The Rotary engine generated enormous temperatures, much harder to control than in a conventional engine. That's why Suzuki had to create complex liquid cooling systems and special lubrication. The problem was that all of this added weight, complexity, and more potential points of failure. The Suzuki RE5 was an incredibly advanced bike, but also way too complex for its time. Its rotary engine confused even mechanics and dealerships, making maintenance difficult and expensive. While Japanese bikes were succeeding because they were simple and reliable, the RE5 felt strange, delicate, and intimidating. It was a brilliant piece of engineering. But Suzuki learned something important. Innovation alone isn't enough if the bike isn't practical. The Suzuki RE5 was a commercial failure because it was too complex and too strange for its time. Suzuki tried to improve it, but sales never took off and the project ended up being canceled in 1976. However, the RE5 left a huge impact. It proved that motorcycles could be radically different and became a symbol of innovation and technological courage. It was a warning for the industry, but also an inspiration. The Suzuki RE5 was not the best bike of the 1970s. It wasn't the fastest, it wasn't the most reliable, and it definitely wasn't the most commercially successful. But it did something that very few motorcycles in history have dared to do: try to completely change the rules of the game. While other brands were perfecting traditional engines, Suzuki decided to bet on something totally different. Something risky, complicated, and futuristic. The RE5 wasn't born to follow trends. It was born to challenge everything the world understood about how a motorcycle should work. And that took courage, because it's easy to improve something that already works. What's hard is trying to create something new. And Suzuki managed to pull it off, even if the result was imperfect, even if the market wasn't ready, even if it ended up being a total failure. Because in the end, not every bike is born to be a sales success. Some are born to experiment, to take risks, to push the limits of engineering. And that's where the RE5 becomes special. Because beyond its problems, beyond its flaws, the RE5 represents something that almost doesn't exist today: the will to do something completely different. A rare, complicated, misunderstood bike, but also incredibly brave. And if you want to learn about the weirdest engines, click on this video.